The Toronto Maple Leafs have parted ways with Craig Berube. Let's go! It starts with an A and ends with anxiety. Off the charts levels of passion! That's just a nightmare! With you wherever you are, welcome to LFR. Yet another head coach out the door. Let's talk about it. First and foremost, the news. This is fresh, hot off the presses. I'm shooting this right after it was announced. From the Leafs themselves, Toronto Maple Leafs general manager John Chayka, still weird, announced today that the club has parted ways with head coach Craig Berube. Now quoting Chayka, "Craig is a tremendous coach and an even better person," said Chayka. "This decision is more reflective of an organizational shift and an opportunity for a fresh start than it is an evaluation of Craig. We are grateful for his leadership, professionalism, and commitment to the Maple Leafs organization and wish Craig and his family nothing but the best moving forward. The club's next head coach will determine the makeup of the remainder of the coaching staff." So here's what I interpret that as meaning. We're not firing the assistant coaches, but the guy we hire might. That is a fascinating dynamic in itself. Marc Savard, already gone just around Christmas from the Leafs. He was a Craig Berube guy. He had him in St. Louis, and he brought him into Toronto. But here's what's amazing. He was replaced by Steve Sullivan. Steve Sullivan ended the season as an assistant coach with the Leafs, working the power play. Something Berube said him and the coaching staff were doing by committee. Him and Treliving never seemed on the same page during the final season at all. But what did Steve Sullivan begin the season as? The assistant coach for the Toronto Marlies. Oh, well, what was he doing before that? Oh, he was the head coach of a U18 AAA team in Phoenix. Oh, what was he doing there? Because that dude was the assistant general manager and briefly general manager of the Arizona Coyotes, including under John Chayka. By the way, if you're like, Steve, why are we saying it that way? That's how we say it now. The Leafs coaching staff also has Mike Van Ryn. He also is a St. Louis guy. I don't know. And Derek Lalonde, who, not a great head coaching history, but as an assistant coach, he was very good with the Tampa Bay Lightning on account of they won cups. And the Leafs penalty kill, which he ran, was very, very good this season. In fact, it was literally the only thing that was consistently good from start to finish this season. Then there's guys like Sam Kim and Jordan Bean on the Leafs video staff. If you touch them, we riot. So let's just get this out of the way. The Leafs have this nasty new trend where they do the thing that their fans have been asking for months after they started asking for it. And listen, I know that you can't run your hockey team just doing whatever the fans say. Hey, we're nuts. We're nuts. That's okay. You can ignore us sometimes. We're nuts. But there's an evolution to it. It starts with, it's more like a question. Hey, is this going poorly? And it evolves to, this is going poorly. Like, there's no question mark, right? Then the question comes back, but it's different. It's like, am I nuts? This is going poorly, right? Then it's, they know that it's going poorly, don't they? Are they doing anything about it? And you start asking questions like, do they not realize that it's going poorly? Which then becomes, do they even watch the games? Which by the end of this Leaf season, I was like, I don't think they do. Maybe they don't. It would make me feel better to know that they don't, because otherwise, they just think this is all okay. This past season for the Toronto Maple Leafs can be defined by what they didn't do. If you want to go back a few years, they didn't trade Marner when they had the chance. But they also won the division last year, and they came into this season, all right, we might take a bit of a step backward, but let's see. When things were going so bad, not just out of the gate, but for the first 3 months of the season, the Leafs had the opportunity, Brad Treliving and company had the opportunity to fire Craig Berube. Now, did Treliving want to do that? I don't know. Would he have been allowed to do that if he did want to do it? I don't know. Because Craig Berube had Keith Pelley wrapped around his finger his whole time here. And by the way, this decision makes me wonder about Keith's future. But only one inevitable, obvious, long overdue firing at a time. They fire the assistant coach, and only the assistant coach, mid-season, around December, which never happens. Ironically, it led to the Leafs' hottest stretch of the season, and briefly, even in January, the Leafs were in a playoff spot. And the Leafs did something. They actually did something, and it led to better results. Did they take any lessons from that? No! It actually reinforced, hey, you know what? Maybe this team's good. They don't make any trades, and they keep the head coach. The head coach who It just seems sucked the life out of this team. Listen, I think a lot of us, probably myself included, I don't remember, but I think myself included, were really excited when Craig Berube got here. There was Sheldon Keefe, right? He comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's meant to be good cop, right? There was Babcock, who all he knows how to do is bad cop, right? Sheldon comes in, it's sunshine and rainbows, and ironically, it was a lot like after Savard got fired. There was a crazy bump. The Leafs, I think, went 12-4 in their first 16 games under Sheldon Keefe. Tyson Barrie, remember all that? He couldn't score a goal under Babcock, and then he scored in like 3 straight games. But you can't just be good cop all the time. We can't all be Ted Lasso, and after a while, it didn't work. Because it became like this begging and pleading with this roster, please. Then in comes Craig Berube, and he's not gonna beg and plead with anybody. He's Craig Berube. He has like, over 3,000 penalty minutes? A man who dropped a bench press bar onto his head, peeling his forehead back, had it stitched up, showed everybody, and then it healed up like nothing happened. That should be the biggest, nastiest, gnarliest scar. And he looks like he did at the beginning of the season. How? And does that make him a great fit for the Leafs? Well, no, not necessarily, but it is cool. There's a famous clip before Game 7 in Boston, in TD Garden, between the Blues and the Bruins, and Berube goes on this impassioned speech, and he punctuates it with, "We're coming out of here with the cup tonight." And I just, oh my God, that guy's coaching my team? Yes! I didn't care that it was one of the weirdest, least replicable cups ever. The Blues, last place, in January of that season, January 2019, they roar into the playoffs, and they end up winning the cup. But like I said, when he was introduced and when he was hired, Berube actually had some really good regular seasons in St. Louis. Other than that one, that crazy run he had in St. Louis on the way to the cup, if I remember correctly, wasn't even his best points percentage as Blues head coach. He was great there for a while. And then, what happens to every coach happens. Eventually it goes stale, and then you get fired. No one's immune from it. Even John Cooper was getting whispers of about a week ago, because even though Tampa looks pretty good and their regular seasons have been consistently pretty good, they've lost in the first round 4 straight years. There's usually consequences for that. And also Toronto. Here, things were accelerated. This season was the biggest one-season drop-off in points in the standings in franchise history. But the death was in the minutia. Scott Lawton looked great in the preseason. Breaks his foot. Oh, nuts. So Max Domi, who practiced with Matthews all summer, all training camp, he was going to be Matthews' first-line right winger. I believe he started injured as well, so that didn't help. But he was the first-line right wing. The Leafs lost their fourth-line center. So naturally, you got to replace that fourth-line center with your first-line right winger. The lineup was a mess immediately. It looked awful, it performed awful, and the team lost games because their fourth-line center got hurt in the preseason. A fourth-line center who cost you a first-round pick, and a fourth-line center who Berube wouldn't even play at center in last year's playoffs when they got him. And the message had gone so ridiculously flat. You couldn't believe that a Leafs team, who's one of the number one criticisms about them about this past season, was that they wouldn't fight. They wouldn't stick up for each other. They wouldn't stick up for themselves. They were coached by Craig Berube. They wouldn't stick up for their goalie. They wouldn't stick up for their captain. They wouldn't stick up for anybody. And by the time that they did, it was way too late. Too late to make the playoffs. Too late to stick up for your captain who's already injured. Too late to do anything. His use of young players was questionable at best, which is concerning because the Leafs have the first overall pick that they're going to use on who knows at this point. It's Gavin McKenna, right? Okay, see how you put a question mark on the end of that? Yeah, I don't know either. But Easton Cowan and the long layoffs of healthy scratches, and Easton Cowan being held to a standard that none of the veterans were. Jacob Quillen being on the fourth line, and then there were injuries, having guys called up, and they play ahead of him. Bo Grew, I understood. Luke Hames, I did not. Not to mention the aspect of having young players called up, seemingly kicking and screaming to actually play them in the lineup. I kind of think of it like pitchers. Think of it like a closer. A closer is a good pitcher, right? Well, a pitcher is a good closer. You start using a closer as a starting pitcher and they don't perform all that well, don't act surprised. They're a closer. This isn't necessarily what they do. I almost look at it that way with Berube, and ironically, he won the Stanley Cup as a closer. That guy comes in, I don't know how many pitches he's got, but he throws heat. He yells, he screams, he gets your attention, and you get the job done. But eventually, batters, and I don't know if that's the other team, I don't know if that's the players that he coached, but batters realize, you know what? This guy throws heat, but he doesn't have that many pitches. And night after night after night, an 82-game regular season, you're like, okay, he's going to the well again. That's his only pitch. And it seemed painfully obvious, painfully early on, that this team did not give a good gosh darn what Craig Berube had to say. And they were outshot every night. They were out-attempted every night. They were outplayed every night. And is that on the players? It's always on the players. The players are the players. But the coach has a job to do. It's not just about strategy and X's and O's and motivation. Dude, you have to be able to get the players on your team to do the things that you want them to do. And if you can't do that, is that on the players? Yeah, kinda. But what am I gonna do? Trade the whole roster and keep you? That's not how the NHL works. That's not how it's ever worked. You gotta go. Well, you can't just ride the new coach bump forever. No, you can't. But it's not gonna stop teams from trying. The Islanders tried it by gassing their head coach, Patrick Waugh, and then they went with Pete DeBoer. They missed the playoffs. Other side of the coin, Bruce Cassidy, who's still available, gets gassed by the Vegas Golden Knights. They bring in John Tortorella, and that team is one win away from the Western Conference Final and the Final Four. Perhaps most importantly of all, Craig Berube used Austin Matthews like he's Dave Steckel. Craig Berube used Austin Matthews probably the way he should have used Scott Laughton. We know Matthews has battled injuries over the past couple seasons in a bad way, and it has led to bad results. He also lost his main setup guy this past season, but Matthews' struggles go way back before he lost his main setup guy. Under Craig Berube, Austin Matthews, who is a good defensive player, his defense zone starts skyrocket. He's basically using the guy like Barkov. Barkov is difficult to replicate. He's extraordinarily good at defense as a forward. He's also surrounded by a ridiculous supporting cast in Florida, up front and on the back end. The Leafs just didn't have that this year. But you know what Barkov can't do? At least he's never done in the NHL? Score 50 goals. Score 60 goals. Score gosh darn near 70 goals. Is Matthews done here? I don't know. Is Matthews ever going to return to what he used to be? I don't know. But the best way to find out is to play Matthews the way you used to play him. Put the 70 goal scorer in a position to score goals. The last thing I want to say, this past season was agony. Agony. We were right about Treliving the whole time. You wouldn't make moves. And then he continued to not make moves. We were right the whole time. We were right about Berube the whole time. He lost the room. He lost the room cataclysmically. Those two did not work well together. At least not this past season. It was the most obvious thing on planet Earth. You could see it from space. We were right about all three of those things. And the Leafs ignored them. Because their overlord manages 6 professional sports teams and doesn't handle criticism well. It's not a great recipe, eh? Now, I am not saying we, the fans, are smarter than hockey executives. They have years of experience and they get it. I don't want to run the team. I shouldn't be running the team. I'm crazy. I'm also just a guy. You shouldn't be running the team. You're crazy. And you're also just someone or other. Which, that being said, it's really, really concerning that we had this all read and written down 4, 5, 6 months ago. What I'm hoping the Leafs get back to, or do for the first time is make decisions that I can look at and be like, oh, I know why you did that. Great. That makes sense. Kyle Dubas had his hits and had his misses, but I always knew why he did something, right? Even if you disagreed, you're like, oh, I know what he's going for, but that's okay. You're not going to agree with everything your GM or coach or whatever does, but you at least, it feels so much more comfortable to understand the method to the madness. This whole past season, I felt like I was taking crazy pills because I did not understand the Toronto Maple Leafs anymore. I didn't understand a single solitary thing they did. This is a return to sanity. Or at very least, this is an obvious move that any NHL team worth paying attention to does. The head coach, who doesn't have to be a terrible head coach or terrible person, wasn't working anymore, and it was time for a change. And now, with the first overall pick, you start brand new with the new GM, even if you disagree with that GM's hire, and a brand new head coach. That's the way you do it. What do you think? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. For now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell your friends. I'm going to go shoot the new Steve Dangle podcast right now. Holy cow. It's one of those days, eh?